And it's interesting, if you read histories of sort of labor and politics in Canada, it was certainly anything written more than 20 years ago, how many of them go up to 1918, 1919, they always have to cover the Winnipeg General Strike. And then they say, and the outcome of the Winnipeg General Strike was the founding of the CCF in 1933. And they skip the 20s. Now, on the other hand, you have the Communist Party-based historians, and in that area, to be frank, you would just have to talk about one person, and that was Tim Buck, who was the historian, as well as the General Secretary of the party. He became General Secretary in 1929, and he remained the head of the Communist Party longer than any Communist Party in any other country in the entire world. There is no other party that had a single leader, another Communist Party, had a single leader as long as the Canadian Party did. Not even China. He left out the 20s in all his books, too. He wrote a lot of books, and if you read my book, you'll discover one of the things I did was just deal with the fact that no two of his books seem to agree on this period, on any period much. But he had other reasons for not talking about the 20s, and the big thing he had reason for not talking about it was that the party that he led, and they actually called it Tim Buck's Party in the 30s, was so different from the one in his first decade, and was led by different people, that he was instrumental in expelling from the party. So he had a lot of reasons not to think about it. And in fact, not until the very last book he wrote, which is called Lenin in Canada in 1970, did he talk about the 20s at all significantly. And he did that for one reason, and that was that William Rodney had written about that period and had to be answered. And the book's main point is to say, well, yeah, but they were all Trotskyites. And I do not exaggerate. That's what he said. So basically, you had people who play down or ignore the history of the 20s for different reasons. And as Joy said, what I said in the book is I wrote the book to try and rescue the history and achievements of those people in the 20s from either being ignored or distorted. The book has sort of three main topics, if you will. There's an awful lot in it, and I can't possibly cover what's in it. But I want to deal primarily with the first topic. The book deals with, first, how did the Communist Party come to be? Where did this organization come from? Second, what was it like and what was it doing in the 1920s? And third, what happened to it? How did it change? Obviously, I'm not going to go through all of that. Besides, if I did that, you wouldn't buy the book. And I hope you will. So remember, the books are back there, great price. And raffle tickets for this is one of only 5 of those posters in the world. And we're not making any more. Promise. So buy a raffle ticket. Got to do a pitch, you know. I'm going to talk mainly about that first topic. Where did this come from? Because I think in some ways that's the most compelling thing for the left today. How did it happen that from a period of decline and scattering and fragmentation, the left came together to create something as remarkable as the Communist Party of Canada was in its first decade? Well, the party was founded officially in May of 1921 at a secret convention in a barn outside of Guelph. As Joyce said, they wrote that they were secret and illegal into their constitution, even though they weren't illegal. Imagine going around and officially declaring yourself illegal. But they did it. They came together from all over the country. They all used pseudonyms. They didn't know where they were going till the last minute. They went by different routes. One comrade was assigned to sit on the roof and pretend he was trying to repair it so he could watch for cops. The meeting lasted just under a day. All the resolutions were passed unanimously, and they all went home and organized a party. And a lot of the histories treated that as some kind of unique, sui generis event. Just poof, there was no Communist Party, then there was one. But, if you've been around the left at all, or around almost anything, but certainly if you've been around the left, you don't organize a meeting like that by accident, and it doesn't happen by magic. And in fact, what you had happen there was not some sudden event that happened in 1921, but the culmination of 3 intense and extraordinary years of political ferment and organization in this country from Cape Breton to Vancouver. It was a very complex process, but in essence, 3 things came together to make this party possible. The first thing was that, again, contrary to what we're usually led to believe, at least until you get to grad school, then they tell you some other stuff. But there already was a large pre-existing Marxist movement in Canada. The Communists weren't the first Marxists in this country. The Communist Party didn't invent Canadian Marxism. There were The great majority of the Canadian left from roughly 1900, 1905, up through to this period, considered itself Marxist. There were three important socialist parties in this country at that time, so you'd say World War I era. One was the Socialist Party of Canada, organized mainly here in Eastern Canada. Its roots go back to groups that were out in Nova Scotia and places like that, but fundamentally its base was British Columbia and the Prairie provinces. Fairly doctrinaire Marxist organization, to understate the case. It focused mainly on educating workers in Marxist theory, but it also elected several MLAs in Ontario, in BC and Alberta. It held the balance of power in the British Columbia legislature for a while, and as a result was able to get some important bills to protect especially working conditions in the mines. And many of its members held leadership position in the unions. Here in BC, the BC Federation of Labour, the entire executive elected in 1912, every single member was a member of the Socialist Party of Canada. So that was party number one. Party number two was the Social Democratic Party of Canada. It was strongest in Ontario, but it also had, right across the country, very deep roots in immigrant workers, particularly Finnish, Ukrainian, and Jewish workers in various parts of the country. It was much more heterogeneous than the Socialist Party, which tended to be fairly clear about its political and perspectives. The Social Democratic Party, its members ranged from people who would have supported the British Labour Party to people probably who had been members of the Bolsheviks in Russia before they came to North America. In fact, know probably about it. We know who some of them were. So a big range of membership. Now, here's the thing. Each of those parties had about 3,000 members. And that's at a time when Canada's population was rather less than half of what it is today. So a remarkable left-wing base that existed.